next up, we have a curriculum panel discussing the importance of getting the language and the wording correct when we do our revalidations to make sure that sustainability in theatre making is embedded throughout the teaching and learning process. So the panel is convened by Jo Franklin, my boss, who's been an absolute rock through this whole process, Associate Professor in Theatre Production at G.S.A at the University of Surrey. She's joined by Jackie from Sharjah that we just met, Paul Colwell, Lecturer in Theatre Practice at Royal Central School of Speech and Drama, Jen Tafer, Production Manager, Designer and Carbon Literacy Trainer, and Will Hargreaves, I think if he's here, Senior Lecturer in Costume Performance Design. I'm not sure if Will's here, but if he is, fabulous. Oh, he's here, brilliant. Okay, over to you, Jo.
Hello, thank you, Katie. And it's really lovely to be hosting this event this afternoon from G.S.A. And I just want to say a massive thank you to Charlie in the background, our fantastic event technician who's facilitating this afternoon. So for this panel, Katie asked me to take an overview of how you can embed the principles of sustainability, as we see in the Theatre Green Book, into our curricula. We have found this is quite an important lever to move it from just another thing we've got to do to something that is really central to our curriculum and how we operate and how we do things. And I think it's about, one of the Green Captains earlier said something about moving the Theatre Green Book to the front of the curriculum. And I think that's really sort of the journey that that we've been on. So I was going to start by sort of going through our journey of sustainability in terms of how we've tried to embed into the curriculum, and then asking my lovely colleagues if they could give their sort of overview of where they've gone with that. And then some top tips if you are thinking, how do I really get this fully embedded so that all of the students and all of the staff who they're engaging with are really on board with moving this forward, because I'm sure we've all got some tips that we can share, which I hope will help others. So I just to sort of talk a little bit about our sustainability journey at G.S.A. You know, a few years back when the idea of the Theatre Green Book was first mentioned, we realised that we wanted to get this, you know, involved into our teaching. As any of you will know, if you're involved in writing or validating or revalidating H.E level courses, it's not something you can just do tomorrow, unfortunately. You can't go, right, we're going to put this in and we'll start tomorrow. It's a much longer process than that. So we started off by adding some sustainability statements to our modules, which was an easy thing to do. Rather than totally revalidating, we started to say, okay, in this module, picking out particular things like production, we will do these things to make it more sustainable. And started on working towards the Green Book standards within productions, which obviously are a key part of the curriculum. Alongside that, we were really lucky in that two things happened at Surrey. They really focused on creating an Institute for Sustainability within the university, which meant that there was suddenly a huge focus on sustainability in the whole university, meeting all of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and Katie was able to become a member of that, which so giving us support from the sort of the top levels and the centre, you know, the sort of power centres of the university to move things forward. And we also embarked on a curriculum design review, which I'm sure many of you involved in higher education have done, where you review all of your courses and revalidate them. Within that, we were asked to incorporate what they called the 5 pillars of the Surrey education strategy. So 5 things that all Surrey graduates should have got a grasp of by the time they leave. And one of those 5 things is sustainability. So that's brilliant. Straight away, we can see that this is our opportunity to get these things really embedded into the curriculum. So through this review, we then went through a process of explicitly considering sustainability in every module across every course. So that's, as well as theatre production and MA stage and production management, that's acting, musical theatre, acting musician, applied in contemporary theatre. So every course has to do this. It's not something that they do in production and the actors just float in and float out. You know, it's key, as our friends from Sharjah said, to get everybody on board with this, all creatives, all the performers, and it becomes a collaborative thing. So that was brilliant. So now everybody has got something in their modules that says we are working towards sustainability. Within our courses rather, the BA Theatre Production and MA Stage and Production Management, we started off with a very top line of our programme specification. The first educational aim on the list, if you go and look at it on the Surrey website, is that this programme will challenge students' understanding of and instill their responsibility to shape a more sustainable future society. So that's the first thing a student will read, which shows that it's at the front of our priorities. Going down into the sort of the detail of the learning outcomes, we have now created learning outcomes across all 4 levels, so from first year to master's level across our curriculum. So within each module, students will see that there are certain things they will need to do and need to engage with in order to pass the module. That's quite a strong motivator for students. As we've heard earlier, many young people are very motivated and enthusiastic about this, but there are many people who still aren't that bothered, actually. How do we motivate those people? Well, we make it something they have to engage with in order to pass their course. So we've tried to step that up from first year onwards. So a level 4 student, so first year at university, would be expected to describe key principles of sustainable production practice. So in practice, that means they're going to learn about the Theatre Green Book in the curriculum. They're going to learn what it is, how it works. They're going to learn why we do that, what's the thinking behind it. And they will be expected to refer to that in various assessments, presentations, and also to put it into practice during production-related modules. In the second year and third year, the level of responsibility grows, and we would be expecting them to apply and analyse key principles of sustainable production practice. So embedding those into their production work and into their research projects across the curriculum, working towards Theatre Green Book standards. In the third year, we'd expect them to analyse and innovate these sustainability solutions. Why are we doing it like this? Is there something more innovative we could do? And that's what we'd expect a third year student to be thinking. So ready to graduate into a professional role. And then finally, at master's level, we would like students to be developing original solutions to these complex issues within creative contexts. So you can see there's a graduated sort of expectation of students from the beginning to the end of their training. What we found is that this is now something that students take for granted. This is something they will expect to do. It's not something that is an additional add-on, like you've got to do this as well as everything else. It's something that's just normal to them. And that's been really, really powerful in changing some attitudes and mindsets. It's all very well trying to do Theatre Green Book on your shows, but shows aren't the only thing that students do. They do lots of other learning as well, and then they apply those to the show. So it's got to be consistent and threaded throughout. So that's been our journey at G.S.A. We're still a journey. We in no way have got everything right. Of course not. There's still loads more to do. And I totally get people's things like storage and getting directors on board and all of those things. They're still challenges. But that's where we've tried to take things. So I'm going to hand over, I think, to Paul now from Central and see what he's been up to, or they've been up to at Central.
Fantastic, thanks very much. God, it's hard to come in after that fantastic introduction. You're doing such good work. I feel like we still have much good work to do at Central, although we are trying. It really resonates with me, the idea that you can't just do this overnight, because I've been kind of sitting gnashing my teeth for what feels like years now for the opportunity to get environmental sustainability into our learning outcomes proper, because you can't just snap your fingers and say we're gonna do it. Having said that, I also recognise what an incredibly kind of privileged position it is to have that control of your own learning outcomes, although it might take a cycle of several years to get there. My field is higher education, but I kind of appreciate all the GCSE and A-level teachers in this space might be going, well, we don't have direct control of the learning outcomes. It's set by an exam board and so on. So I think if we have time, we might also talk about how you can work with learning outcomes that you're handed from on high, as it were, because I think there are ways of doing that. I think there are really, really good ways of doing that, actually. But Central, we are currently, I mean, like, this is literally what we're doing right now. We're in a big portfolio review, and the top of my agenda with my engagement with this is to get those sustainable learning outcomes in at the graduate outcome level. That's part of our process, is actually as an organisation to say, what is it we want all of our students, no matter what they're studying, to kind of come away from the institution with. So we're starting at that for us, that's the absolute top level of it. So we're looking at graduate outcomes that have to work for all of our graduates, not just my area, which is production, but also our acting courses, also our applied theatre courses, also our theatre in education courses, all of these kind of things. And it can be tricky because there's a lot of competing voices there. And to be frank, there are some colleagues who the sustainability is just not really on their agenda. So there's a lot of negotiation, and there's a lot of wordsmithing going on, if you see what I mean, in terms of kind of going, well, let's get these words in, because then we can interpret them like this, whilst other colleagues can interpret them in a different way. What I would say, though, is just to pick up on what the Natasha and Rory said, those two fantastic green captains that we heard from earlier. I think Natasha said we see some really bad practice in drama schools, and then Rory immediately followed that with, some individuals are really interested, but it needs to be made systemic. And that's absolutely hitting the nail on the head. I really passionately feel like environmental sustainability has to be made systemic. It has to just be part of the system. This is why I think, Joe, you're talking about just normalize it. It just has to be normalized. This just has to be a thing that everyone takes for granted. Like any big organization, at Central, we've got some people who are absolutely all over this, and they're doing incredible work on their courses, and other people, it's not that they don't care, it's just not found its way up their priorities list. But embedding it in learning outcomes really puts it, on people's priorities list. It has to be covered. And the point at which this really landed for me was actually in the pandemic. When the pandemic hit, and like lots of educators, we went, oh gosh, how do we keep the wheels turning? The one thing that I think lots of people come back to was, oh, can we deliver the learning outcomes? That's the absolute bottom line of it, is, are we delivering the learning outcomes? So if sustainability is one of those, it's a thing you've got to deliver. And if it's not one of those things, it just means it's a thing that can fall by the wayside, because the learning outcomes are the kind of, they are the final arbiter on what we're teaching in whatever level and whatever courses we're on. So that's where we're at. It's a very exciting phase. We're currently doing the work, which has been a few years coming, but we're on it now. So
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Systemic is a really good word, isn't it? That we need to make this completely normal and just not anything. For those of you who are as old as me, we remember when health and safety wasn't so much of a thing, and now it's normal and nobody complains about it. So that's going to be that's the future, and it is happening now, I hope. Thank you. So over to Will from Bournemouth. How's things going for you in terms of curriculum?
Hi, thanks, Joe. Yes, it's encouraging to hear, that we're doing some of the things that you're doing at G.S.A, and the work that you and Katie are doing there, which is very inspiring. But we're in the position where we have all just had a validation, a periodic review, and it was the opportunity to kind of have a look at all our learning outcomes and to embed this in. We were kind of charged, I think, of making sure that every unit, or at least 2 out of 3 units per year, included related to the UN sustainability development goals. So there's some of them. So we have, but we were also charged with not increasing, because it would be easy to sort of, oh, let's just add add a learning outcome about sustainability onto the others, but there was a kind of drive to actually reduce the number of learning outcomes on some of the units, the modules that we teach. So we have therefore written some of the learning outcomes tend to sort of wrap up sort of ethical and sustainable goals and knowledge, and then on some of the units we're able to be a little bit more explicit about the looking at sustainability. And as someone else kind of previously mentioned too, there is that sense, I think, because we're sort of all involved in this aspect and have sort of acquired quite a lot of knowledge about it, we kind of assume that the young people and students are going to be on the same page or have the same level, that they're going to have a sort of basic understanding. And what we found is that, as Paul just said, they don't all come or with that kind of necessarily that bothered about it or that interested, which is, it can be kind of still quite surprising. So the way that we've kind of put the learning outcomes, a bit like Joe was saying, it's sort of developed through the years. So it starts with looking at an awareness, and we introduced the whole concept of the Theatre Green Book and an awareness of the sustainability issues in the first year, and then build on that. I've just been sort of looking back at some of our learning outcomes now and thinking, because they do start. So an example might be that they would demonstrate that they can synthesize reference, research material, investigating the context of the design brief with academic referencing and protocols with consideration of ethical and sustainable practices. So that's kind of clearly a sort of example where we've had to sort of tack that on to an existing learning outcome, whereas in the following unit they do in the first year, we're actually able to have a learning outcome which is to demonstrate an awareness of sustainable practices, responsible consumption and production for set and costume design through a sustainability statement. And that's something that we've introduced into every unit now. Apart from, I realise, the contextual studies ones, I've realised don't actually have this, but every other unit that the students do across all 3 years, they write a sustainability statement. Those in the first year they will be themed, so there'll be a kind of a topic. It might be that they write their sustainability assessment on sustainable fabrics, and then the second unit it might be looking at sustainable model making materials or set construction materials, and so on. I suppose I should also mention that because we have probably about 2/3 of our students probably will end up in the TV and sort of film industries and the costume departments there. So we also introduce them to the Albert. We have to deliver sessions on the Albert Education Partnership Framework, which I know hasn't really kind of been mentioned, but it sort of runs alongside. And there's a lot of crossover and useful models there. But that's sort of where we are at the moment. Yeah.
Thank you, Will. Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the UN Sustainable Development Goals. That's something that we're explicitly supposed to engage with us here at Surrey, and we focus so much on the sort of the production, the sort of reuse of materials side of things, but there are so many others that we have also, tried to some extent get into our curriculum. But it's, look it up if you're interested, because they cover everything in the world. Okay, I'm gonna go to Jackie now, because we've just seen your brilliant work in Sharjah on a particular production. How is that related into your curriculum?
Thanks, Joe. It's had a significant impact, and even we were talking in the chat about, how is that different for us in terms we are a younger institution and we don't come with that history and bureaucracy that I've been in those buildings where they can be a challenge. And even with a new and a young curriculum and programs, they quite quickly become outdated to the shifts and the changes and the speed at which we're moving at in living and working sustainably. For us, and how we framed it for faculty was, what can we influence and what can we creatively with creative license, what can we change? The TED talk that we referenced in the talk by H.E is a really good way to frame it for faculty. So she talks about, quite often we come at sustainability and our environment with that being the third portion, and then we have economical, and we have people, but and the sweet spot of the Venn diagram where they all meet is how we sustain that working. What she says is we have to put environment around the whole thing. So going back to the top level, if we're looking at graduate attributes, which we can't change overnight, and they're probably going to be with us for a short while, there's one in there about graduates will be global citizens. What that means in the bigger picture takes a lot of unpacking, but actually for us as a global citizen, it's how you live and work sustainably. So we can then start to filter down into the learning outcomes, into the assessment briefs, and into the actual classroom content. I think there's certain parts of production programs and certainly performance programs where we can influence what those learning outcomes are quite quickly, and ones where we can't. So, for example, the majority of similar programs will work on productions or have production roles or show roles. Those, in the very way that they're created, we have to be quite flexible, because depending on the script, depending on the creative team, the learning outcomes always shift, and we're not always in direct control of what those are. So what we found was, if there was a production, or if there is a production where we can't, the level in which the students are working sustainably is much less or limited, then the point of critical reflection, however that forms itself in your course or module, whether it's a vlog, whether it's a journal or a Viva, then the student can comment critically on that. And if it wasn't done, why wasn't it done? What could you have done? And then it's about bring in those tutors who are on board and how they can embed that into their particular courses. So looking for the course leaders or the module leaders who are part of your allyship, and embedded it into the curriculum that way then.
Yeah, I love that. I love looking for the allies and using everything as a learning experience. Even if it doesn't go brilliantly, you're still going to learn something about sustainability from it, aren't you? So fabulous. Thank you. Just in the last minute, I'm going to go to Jen, who came and gave a fantastic training day for us at G.S.A, and I felt like I learned so much from it. So from your point of view, Jen, what's the most important thing we could be doing to embed this learning into our curricula?
Yeah, thank you. So for those who I haven't met, I don't work at one single college, but I do come in providing carbon literacy training, but also working as sort of a theatre green book lead or a sustainability consultant in a number of different colleges. And there's a lot of things that have already been said, things like embedding it across departments, so that I think one of the feedback points that I hear from a lot of production students is that they're told one thing, or they're told that sustainability is important, and then they get into a production setting where perhaps that's not supported by the freelancer artists that are coming in, or they're with performers who haven't had the same information. Sessions that I've run that have just been really, really exciting are ones where the performance students and production students are actually in the same sustainability training, and they're talking about how it affects both of them. And then by the time they get to Tech Week or they get to the stage, they understand what the others are doing and why they're doing it. And I think a couple of people today have mentioned the why, that this is important. I think probably amongst young people, there is starting to be almost an exhaustion with it. like, oh God, green again. And I think that, taking sustainability as the wider context, it's not just the environment, it's also sustainability in terms of how people are treated, it's sustainability in terms of budgets and finances. Sustainability is what means the industry will continue. And so preparing for that future is really important, but also I think not just the why, but speaking to the why it's still valuable, like why it's still worth doing. We're not at a point yet where we should be giving up. And I think sometimes the narrative around the climate crisis is the earth is burning and forget it. It's done. And that's not where we are. And actually saying, look, this is how far we've come since the Paris Agreement. This is what we've already integrated. I mean, for goodness, looking at what the 3 years of the Green Book has done to our industry, it's enormous. And so I think speaking to the why it's still worth doing, as well as the why we would want to do it. And I'm a big fan of sneaking it in on reading lists as well.
Oh yeah, we've done that. Everything is on every reading list. There's everything we can do. Well, that was absolutely brilliant. We've run out of time, but I think we've got some fantastic tips there from everybody. And I hope it's been helpful in inspiring other people as to how you can start to bring this work to the front of your curriculum and really engage everybody.